friends, it's Terri Gaines, independent demonstrator with Stampin Up. In this video tutorial, I'm going to share a center slider easel card created with a cute as can be designer series paper. This designer series paper is 12 by 12 in size. You get 2 each of these adorable 6 double-sided designs, and they are so cute. You might look at this paper and say, that looks familiar, but this is designer series paper Stampin' Up used to carry with different colors. They've reintroduced this designer series paper in their scrapbooking brochure, the January 2025 scrapbooking brochure. It is on page 15. Plus it coordinates with a new stamp set and dies. There are scrapbooking workshops you can purchase, some coordinating 12 by 12 two-tone cardstock, lots of different product. I'm mainly going to be using the designer series paper. I also want to let you know it coordinates with a stamp set that is in the annual catalog called Be My Valentine and the Bee Builder Punch. I'm going to be using both of those, the designer series paper and the new dies that are in the scrapbooking brochure. So this is the paper. This is the stamp set that is in the annual catalog. This is the builder punch in the annual catalog, and you can punch out these 2 hearts and the body of the bee, and that heart punch will punch out those wings. So you can be very creative with the product that's in the annual catalog. The product that's new in that scrapbooking brochure coordinates very well with the existing stamp set. A different size bees, a smaller and larger one. You can build those. You have dies to cut those out. You have some additional dies, and I'm going to be using these dies. These are pretty cool. You get 5 dies that layer, but when you cut them out, you get this piece and this border piece. So for example, this one die cut this piece out and that piece out. So I'm going to be using those. So let's start with prepping all the materials we need for the project. I do have the measurements here. I will provide a PDF that you can download for free on my blog. So I'm going to start out with the designer series paper layers. They're 1 by 4. I'm using that designer series paper that I just showed you. I'm picking small prints because it's only 1 inch thick or 1 inch wide. But I also see that I do have some white space here that I want to fill in, and the beauty of designer series papers, you can stamp on top of it. So I'm going to take the stamp image that is in this stamp set, these 3 little hearts. I'm going to take the Petunia Pop ink pad color, and I'm going to add some additional hearts to this designer series paper. So I'm just going to randomly stamp these. So I'm just going to stamp them, to fill in some of that white space, and just, as I mentioned, just randomly stamp these. And this is an option you have for any of your designer series papers, is you can add color to them. When I'm done with this tutorial, I have another sample where I even added more color to this exact design, and I used a blender brush to do that. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to just add one more here and kind of cover that one up. So that's one side. So these designer series paper strips, you need 2 of them. So I've got those stamped ahead or cut ahead of time, and just randomly stamping this. And no rhyme or reason to this, just filling in some of that white space. And this is optional. You definitely don't have to do that. And let's put one more right there. All right, then I'm going to put one more right there. There's like, you could keep going. We're going to say that's good. So those are the designer paper layers. You need 2 of those. Now we have an inside layer that is 2 3/4 by 4, and this is where you're going to have an option to stamp a sentiment. I'm going to use a sentiment that's in that same stamp set that I just shared with you. I'll just set that right here. I'm going to use this one, and that's going to be on this, what I'm calling the inside layer, And because I know how this card is going to turn out, I know where to stamp this. If you are new to creating I'm gonna just make sure I get a good coverage here. And let me finish this, and then let me stamp this, and then I'll finish my statement. If you have not stamped a card like this before, you're going to want to see how it's assembled before you stamp your sentiment. I know how I'm going to assemble this, so I know where I can stamp that. So that's the only sentiment I'm putting on this layer. I'm going to set that aside. I'll just put it in that pile. Then we have a sentiment layer that is 2 3/4 by 1 7/8. I'm going to make this a Valentine card. So I'm going to stamp the Happy Valentine's Day on this one, and going to stamp it. I need to give it time so the ink can absorb into the paper. And there I have that one stamped. Now I do have the decorative panels are going to be from here. There is a stopper, and there's also another decorative image I want to stamp. So I'm going to stamp the decorative image, and I'll show you that in a moment, how I create that. That's going to be with this Love You stamp. So again, give it time to absorb into the paper, hold even pressure. So I've got that. And then my stopper for this project is going to be a heart that's punched out of the punch right here. I'm going to use the heart punch or heart stamp first. So I'm going to stamp that on this paper and give it time to absorb into the paper, even pressure. And there we have the heart. So I have all the stamping done. I'll clean my stamps off when I'm done with the video. Now I'm going to bring this punch in. I work with them upside down. I'm going to stamp the Love You from this punch. That's going to be a decorative image. And then this is going to be the stopper. So I look for even spacing, punch that out. So there we have that. So we are to the card, we're going to go back up to the card base. So I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer for that. You know what, why don't let me talk about these pieces. This is the decorative panel and images. I told you about these dies. What I did was I picked 3 of them. I'm going to have the smallest one, basic white, and this is that extra piece you get. I'm going to save that and find a new projects for those. Then I'm going to have basic black. Then I'm going to have the petunia pop. Now, let me see. I don't think this, yes, this is the largest, second largest, third largest. So those are going to be my decorative panels. Now I wanted to add texture to this one, so I brought in a new folder. This new folder is called Plaster Painting 3D. It is the current new online exclusives. So I placed this in here, closed it, ran it through my die cutting machine, and I got this unique, fun texture to it. So that's going to be my decorative panel. Now these I'm going to save for another project. So I think my pile is going to tip over on this side. It's getting kind of high there. There we go. So now we are to the card base. So I'm using basic black for my card base. I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer, and I'm going to explain all of this details. So you want to score it at 4 1/4. So I'm going to score it with my paper trimmer. So I'm marking this at 4 1/4. I'm going to take my scoring blade. I'm going to score that. Then it says to cut 1 1/4 from the edge to the score line. So I'm going to rotate it this way and cut, mark it at 1 1/4. Now I'm going to cut from the score line to the edge. So I'm just going to go, instead of pulling it down, I feel that moves the cardstock, I'm going to push the blade upward. Got to the score line, mark that line right to the score line, the line on the cutter blade. And then it says 4 1/4. So I'm going to move it over to 4 1/4 and cut it again from the score line. There's the score line. I'm going to mark this line up on the cutting blade to the score line, push it down, and then slide it all the way up. So that's going to make these two cuts. Then it says to fold the center panel in half. So that means take this edge and fold it to the score line. Now, cardstock has a grain. That would fold easy. I could fold it, use my bone folder to score it. If you're against the grain, it does not work so well. So if you need to score this instead of fold with a bone folder, I'd suggest you fold these two pieces down. This panel is 4 1/4. Half of that is 2 1/8. So I mark this fold at 2 1/8. Then I take my scoring blade and score that. Now this is how you would fold this in half to do that part. So that's how we prep the card base. So now assembly. So we're all ready for assembly. What we're going to do for this fun fold is take this panel and adhere it to the card base, this panel, adhere it to the card base. So what I like to do is fold all of these down first. And you know what, I don't have a bone folder over here. I moved it to the other side of my workstation. That's okay, I can use my fingers. So crease that. Now I mentioned we're adhering this panel to that. What I like to do is hold this center panel down first. When I put my adhesive, I can put my adhesive here or here. Then I can fold that down, and then I'm lining it up to alignment with the center panel and to the edge. I find that works best for me. So as I mentioned, I'm gonna put my adhesive on this panel, or if you'd prefer, you can just put it right there. Either one's gonna work. Fold that down and adhere that. The center panel does not get adhered. And as I mentioned, you could also put your adhesive right here. Either one, because we're sandwiching that all together. And then put your adhesive right there. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted those to adhere and this to be open. Now we're going to go to the bottom of the stack and work our way up. These pieces are going to go on the edge, and I'm thinking that works perfect. What I'm looking at is what I want them this way or that way, which way the bees are flying. I'm good with this way. So put your double-sided adhesive on. And we're looking for center or equal spacing on all sides of this panel that we just adhered to the card base. So I'm looking for equal spacing. I'm good with that. And I just like how those added hearts fill in that white space. But like I mentioned, that's all optional. You don't have to do that, but it's definitely an option. And here we go. We're going to put that one down. Now in the center spot is where we're going to adhere this piece. So I'm going to adhere that next, and that's going to have equal spacing on all sides of that open area there. And look for equal spacing, and that's like that. Okay, now this that I've called a sentiment layer, I'm adhering that to this part. That's where you could sign your card. You could actually sign it here too, or you could stamp the Happy Valentine's Day here and sign it here. You have all kinds of options. Once you see how this all comes together, you'll see your different options you have. Whoops, don't want that to be upside down. And equal spacing on the ends and between the score lines. So that's the inside. We need to put a stopper on here, but we're going to do that last. So we're going to close this. Now we're going to talk about that decorative panel again. We know that I cut all of these. So I'm going to adhere these together to be my decorative panel. Now on my measurements, I call out decorative panel / image. You could have stamped this piece, and that could be your decorative panel and your decorative image, or you can add decorative pieces to your panel. Again, lots of options. So I'm going to do this. And as I mentioned, also I have two other samples to share. that I've created with the same type of product. So now what I'm going to do is attach this panel to just the lower section here, just to this panel right here. So first what I do is I place it on top of here to visually see that when I place it here equally, I'm going to have about 1/8 of an inch spacing here, and I cover up on the top part. I cover the entire panel. What I choose to do is put adhesive only on the bottom edge of the panel. Let me do that first. I know that's going to adhere to the entire panel. Nothing's going to overhang on the bottom part of it. So let me just show you, right? It's going to stay on there. If it hung over, I would not want adhesive there because it's going to be exposed and adhere to that. I also know it's going to cover up this entire middle section, so I can put adhesive right there, turn this upside down, look for my equal spacing on top and bottom, on the sides. On the sides, I'm looking at the triangles to see that they're equal. Now I put that down, and that's my trick so you don't get any exposed adhesive. So that's our panel. Now I say we want to decorate this. I'm going to decorate it with that heart that I have stamped and punched out. And then what I did was I cut out some of the designer series paper. You could stamp and punch out the bee. I actually took this designer series paper. These bees right here are carrying hearts or holding hearts. So I cut one that's flying that direction, one that's flying that direction, and one like that. I'm going to decorate my card with those. I'm going to attach them with the dimensionals. So I'm going to first put the bees on there. So how I'm going to do this is, well, first what I would do is kind of look at this and say, how do you want your bees to fly? And how do you want them to be positioned? So I'm going to have the heart here. So I'm going to just see if I can get that. I'm going to take one at a time, and I like to put at least 2 dimensionals on something, and sometimes they don't quite fit. If you need to, just trim your dimensionals. I'm just putting them on the body. I'm not going to attach the wing. So I'm going to have that one right here. I'm going to take a couple for the heart. So I'm going to put one here. And you know, I look at this and I say, well, I could fit 3 on there, but these are so strong, and you don't need more than a couple on a small image like this. I have that here. I'm going to take this one, put that one here, that one there. Now, as I mentioned, you could stamp some images too, and I'm just using this adorable paper. I'm not a fan of cutting these pieces out, but the beauty of it is, if you, let me get this on here. What you can do is, oh, I want to make sure it's hidden. There we go. You don't have to worry about your fussy cutting here because it's camouflaged on that white, and nobody's going to see any imperfections. So I cut leaving white space and put it on the white cardstock so it camouflages all of that. So I just love that. These bees are carrying hearts. There's hearts on that paper. Now when we open this up, we need a stopper so it stands like that. And I'm going to use this heart. Now for this one, I do want to put 3 dimensionals on here. You don't want your stopper to collapse, and you want it to be, you have to use dimensionals so it's high enough that your card will rest on it. So I'm going to put my heart right there, and that's going to be the stopper for the card. So the person's going to receive it in the envelope like that. It's going to open like that. You can open like this, and you could sign here or reverse that, or you could omit that and just stamp and sign right there. So I hope you like this fun fold. I just love this paper and this product. Let me show you those other 2 cards I have. So here is really the very same card, but you can see how I turned the paper to be yellow. Right here, I took that. I have this piece yellow. And then what I did was on these, I even colored those so it camouflaged any of my imperfections, and it opens like this. This is where I took the daffodil and I took the blending brush and I went in, and before I assembled it, I put that color on the paper, on this, and on those images. So it's really the very same card. This was the first one I made, and I used the second smallest, second largest, third largest, fourth largest, and I just felt I had more space here, so my next ones I increased those. But just a fun card to create. And for this one, I used the floral print and I added another layer. I just increased that petunia pop layer, and I have the bees that are carrying flowers and the flower images there. And then I used petunia pop for the ink pad color. Very same concept, but I just added more layers. That's the beauty of paper crafting. You can add as many layers as you want. You can change your card up. And I hope you enjoyed this fun fold. As I mentioned, I'll have a PDF on my blog. My blog name is createwithterrigaines.com. I have several free PDFs that I offer. As a thank you for the free PDFs, I would love to have you subscribe to my YouTube channel, watch my YouTube videos, share them, and like them. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Take care and happy creating.